Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dominion Online Championships quarterfinal. I'm joined by JNails,
Hola.
and this is Kayoshii against Rubesty. No idea if that's really how those names are said, as usual, but at least I'll say them that way consistently.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, it seems can't be too wrong at least.
I think you gotta draw out the last syllable on kayoshii if you want to be more accurate.
Okay.
Um, what do we got in this first kingdom?
I mean, this looks fairly witch forward, right? There's no way at all
Yes.
to get rid of the curses.
Yeah, curses will matter because there's no trashing at all. Um, Map Maker looks really good to me. It's not too much draw in total, but it sifts through all your stuff to find the cards you actually care about. Um, but Map Maker, Stowaway, Witcher, draw, plenty of villages. You can definitely get stuff working here. Step one, I think, is play witches a bunch.
Yeah, I think whatever you can do to play, which is a bunch, is definitely step one. Win that curse split. Like you said, you'll be able to fight through it a little bit. You've got plenty of villages. You've got the map makers. Payload's not really here at all. Um, Maybe is it rogues? I guess maybe.
I was thinking bandit camp, probably.
Yeah, that's probably more
You know,
natural.
villages anyway.
And rogue probably doesn't do too much for you.
Yeah. So Rubesty takes the shortcut to Witch of just having a 5/2, which is nice. Kayoshi opts for Town and Silver, looks like. I I think I would have voted for Mapmaker and Silver, a little bit better hitting 5 probably, but Town Silver is perfectly reasonable. Unlike most villages, Town you can play for 2 coins on the first shuffle, or the first reshuffle rather. And so like opening village is basically doing nothing most of the time. But Town can be a silver the turn you need it to be a silver, and then it can be a village after that. So it's a reasonable opening.
Yeah, town's very nice in the open, uh, pretty much always. But I don't think it's as nice as just opening Witch here is.
Yeah, and Rubesty finds the Witch turn 3, which is really significant because with an 11 card deck, you play Witch turn 3, you're shuffling your deck again before turn 4 even. And so that Witch is already going back into your deck. You could conceivably play it turn 4, but if not, you're guaranteed to play it turn 5, which Kayoshi does.
There is certainly a lot of game left to be played here, though. Lots of shuffling to still
Indeed.
happen.
Yeah. Like if Kayoshi could keep the curse split to something like 6-4, that wouldn't be into the world. They still have the player one advantage, which is something.
Yeah, and Tayoshi did get the second Witch first. Has had a little bit better luck shuffling. I mean, it does help your shuffles a little bit to not have the Witch first, even though playing the Witch is obviously better than anything else you'd be doing.
So now we got to choose our first 5 that's not a witch. We go to Bandit Camp. I think my vote would have been Sculptor probably, but Bandit Camp is perfectly reasonable.
Is
I agree,
the
Sculptor.
idea with Sculptor that you're gaining silver off of it a little bit? Or,
Uh, Ideally, I'd be gaining other action cards. Like what I really want is Town, Map Maker, Stowaway. But if I gain a silver and get a Villager, I mean that's a decent consolation prize. A nifty little trick here is you can gain Sculptor and play Stowaway immediately from hand because it will trigger off of its own reaction. Because you gained a duration card, which is the Stowaway. And if you need a Village effect, you could actually gain a Stowaway, play the Stowaway immediately away the Ox, and then play your Witch or whatever else is in your hand.
yeah, those are all quite nice uses of Sculptor. Be a little bit worried about stowaways in the deck towards the end, but it seems like there's probably not going to be a lot of game left by the time that's an actual issue.
Yeah, it's also hard for them to be too bad with the way the Ox here, because like if you had a pair of Stowaways in your hand, you Ox one, you play one for 2 cards, you still broke even.
Yeah, that's not bad. Ox definitely helps with that, and you kind of want Ox probably a little bit anyways. So you can just load up
Mhm.
on map makers relative to like towns.
Yeah, I want a bunch of map makers, I think, at some point in the game.
Could also gain a state with sculptor. Yeah, that's right as well. That could be pretty nice towards the end.
Yeah, that is a significant thing with map maker. Is I mean, obviously you can trigger it off your opponent's green cards, but that requires you to have map makers in hand. If you find map makers later in the shuffle, it's often nice to be able to gain a victory card in the action phase and then trigger your own map makers. Because, like, let's say you have 5 map makers in your deck and you gain 1 estate off of your sculptor. Well, you trigger the first map maker, which can draw the next map maker, which can draw the next map maker, and you're getting like 5 village effects off of 1 estate gains. You might not have wanted to gain the estate, but for 5 villages, that's worth it. And if you needed actions, you could always play one of those map makers as an ox, even. Yeah, swap is a card I'd also expect to have at some point. Just once the witches run out, for example, turning witch into sculptor looks really good. The witch isn't a terrible card here; they still draw, but like witch into map maker is just straight up an improvement once the curses are out. Or witch into sculptor, which gains map maker, looks even better.
I don't think swap is probably worth picking up here, just as I doubt you ever actually have real deck control. Maybe you can jam your deck full of enough good things that that's not true, but I would be surprised if you ever actually have enough villagers or villages to really have control here.
Oh, so I'm looking at it and thinking, like, wouldn't it be nice to have a swap if you don't know, you don't have full control of your deck? You get always exactly the action card you want at the exact time that you want it. Like I got a hand of 2 witches and a swap. All of a sudden, I'm really happy to turn one of those witches into a village or something.
That's true. You just need a 3 action card hand to
Yeah,
make that work, which I'd be a little bit worried about, but it
yeah.
could
I mean,
you could definitely get it.
it's obviously competing with good stuff. Like maybe at every specific point, you could take a swap. Maybe you just prefer a sculptor or something. But especially with like two witches, both look like good swap targets to me. Like if I bought a swap instead of a sculptor and I swap a witch into a sculptor, I'm already pretty happy. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, here we do see the stowaway. I assume Ox. No, not as an Ox.
Oh, they didn't do the clever thing. Maybe just stopping here is fine, but they could have played on with the witch. Get the 2 cards now instead of the 2 cards next turn.
Yeah, I think wanting just the duration draw there is pretty reasonable from that spot. It does let them get the town in hand off the start here, which is quite a nice thing to have.
I wonder if gold mine is worth taking soon. I don't want any golds or anything, but I do want plus buy probably at some point. And playing a town terminally instead of playing as a village is a big commitment. Whereas gold mine is just cantrip plus buy.
Yeah, it is. I could see going for the gold mine, although I could also see just the argument for more sculptor and just deal with town as your plus buy if you get to the point where you're hitting a big enough
Yeah,
number where that's really an issue.
yeah. My answer was just going to be you get a swap, and then you can cross that bridge when you come to it. Swap into a gold mine if you want to, or swap into a sculptor that plays a town if you can support that.
That's true. Just
Um,
drawing drawing a decent amount of stuff and being able to do the swap tricks is, if you can get there, that's a really nice place to be.
so these players have played each other 12 times in total in the ladder, and it is 6 wins for Rubesty, 4 for Kayoshii, and 2 ties. That's a lot of ties in 12 games. Ties are not very common in Dominion.
Yeah, that is a lot of ties in that sample. I don't actually have any idea what the tie number is, but just off of a sense from like league games that I've played, I have to imagine it's around like 1 or 2%, not 20.
Yeah, I think probably about 1% seems about right. Let's see if I can get a good estimate of that real fast.
Yeah, about 1%. So yeah, that's well, I guess 1% things happen twice. you know, some portion of the time. I
I
don't
mean,
know. It
one
seems
system could be
seems pretty
definitely.
quotable to me. It's in spec chat and everything. Though I guess spec chat is meant to be. You can't be held accountable for anything you say in spec chat.
It's not permanent. This is not going online or anything. No one will ever know. If you have anything you want to confess, get off your chest. Now'd be a good time limit spawn.
It would have been good as for me as commentating on this to have looked at those interviews before this, but I didn't, so I'll have no insight from them.
I don't think Rubesty's interview is out yet.
Okay.
But Kayoshii did an interview and professed a profound hatred for Ninja. So I know who I'm rooting for.
Well, yeah, that's okay. I mean, that seems a sensible thing to.
Agreed.
You hate things that lose you the game when you roll the
Yeah.
board, and Ninja can do that for you.
I'd go so far as to say if you didn't dislike it, there might be something wrong with your moral compass. You should do some deep soul searching.
I
What's
like it
getting
when
attacked every turn starting on turn 3?
yeah, that part is fairly terrible. I actually kind of like the +1 card shadow thing, for when you want like
I
four
like shadow as a
mages.
mechanic a lot, yeah.
Um,
Actually, I want to say this is in part why the shadow mechanic ended up existing. Because I remember Ninja was the first shadow card, and I was like, I hate this, please delete it. And Donald X was, no, I'm not doing that. I like shadows too much. I'll just make more shadows. Um, so you get the nice mechanic.
so yeah, the other shadows are like
Um,
Fishwinder and Alley, and those cards are wonderfully pleasant. But yeah, Ninja has that
yeah,
issue for sure.
yeah.
This
All the
looks
other shadows I like.
yeah, that seems right. I mean, Ronin is maybe the only one, but that's just as Ronin's like I think maybe completely awesome, and I need to learn that.
Yeah, I still don't think I've got a great grasp of how to play optimally with those cards. Like I just had an interesting Ronin game. It was one of those gamble kingdoms where the goal is just gamble through your entire deck. But it was nice to add a Ronin to that anyway because you could just always play it at the start of a turn
Yeah, the
in
draw
a
to
deck that otherwise
X.
would be really averse to having actions.
Yeah, sorry, the draw to X with Ronin being Shadow is like a huge deal because it's good even in decks where normally adding draw to X is bad. Uh,
And here we have our most convincing case against Ninja yet, is Lemon Spawn likes it, which is how you know it's too oppressive. In fact, I'm pretty sure DZ likes it too. So like, really on thin ice there. All right, I finally got results back on number of ties. In all of my games, I have 305 total ties, which is less than 1%. Obviously, you expect to see a few more ties between two equally matched opponents, but the numbers are not. Two ties in 12 games is very high.
can someone calculate the percentage of how likely it is to tie 2 and 12 with a 1% overall? That's a good like
I don't know. Dominion players are not known for their mathematical abilities.
it's like an entry level college statistics question. Um, this type of game is a little bit difficult to. I mean, I know I have not at all really made an effort to stay focused on commentating on it in the last, I don't know, eight or nine turns. But it's also kind of hard to commentate on because these turns are all pretty messy.
I'm confused by some of the choices that were just made there by Kayoshi. So they picked up the spoils from their map maker rather than just taking both action cards, which I would have in a heartbeat just taken the witch and the map maker, especially because you needed something to ox anyway. Ox the witch, it's not doing much for you, and I'd rather have the spoils on my deck for the next shuffle.
Yeah, spoil seems like a good card. I'm a little bit surprised there are so many stowaways left. Although the
Yeah, I like the stowaway tricks here. And we got sculptors.
yeah, it seems like the reason for that is that map makers have just been getting really slammed, which makes sense given that map maker is so
Yeah,
terribly
totally on
good.
board taking all the map makers, but they're also taking provinces a little bit earlier than I suspected. Um, I mean, maybe there's just not enough debt control to want to build any further, but
It is
like
turn
piles weren't
19.
that low. You know, it's not they had to buy a province to vote a pile out. I would have like I'm looking at a bunch of sculptors. I'd be happy to have more of those in my deck. I'd love to have a swap or two. Bandit camps are good. All the stuff there sub 5 are good. That's why I want the sculptors. I would have thought you could have accomplished a little bit more before greening.
Yeah, it seems like Rubesty is a little bit more interested in continuing to build, whereas
Kayoshii is greedy.
Kayoshi's just full greening. But this is not too. This doesn't look too great of a turn for Rubesty.
Uh, yeah, lovely, but what do you do here? You have 8 money. That's like a stowaway and a swap or something. It's not terrible. I mean, I guess you could have cantripped this and hoped to draw another action. I like just stopping here, buying a stowaway, and triggering.
So 1.3% ties on the ladder.
Oh. Okay, so Rubesty just really wants that province, which I don't know. I don't buy it. If you wanted points, I think you could have done like a duchy and a stowaway, but you're getting like duchy stowaway. You get a duchy instead of a province. So 3 points, but you get 2 extra cards next turn. You get a stowaway in your deck, and I mean you're not lowering the province pile, which if you're behind in points, you're happy to catch up on duchies. I think. How do you pull? One way Holtz is just go to Downbot and type exclamation point versus minus sign A, lowercase a, and it'll show your match ranking, or your total wins, losses, and ties versus everybody. And then you can hopefully figure out the percent of ties by doing ties divided by the total number.
Interesting that Kayoshi takes Duchy there over Province. Could have used the coffers to go up to Province. Uh, I would think that I would be really interested in just taking the provinces and lowering that pile from Kayoshi's position.
I I think I agree. Again, I think that for the same reason Rubesty I thought would have wanted duchies to prolong the game. I think Kayoshi would have wanted to lower the provinces to shorten the game. What with the points lead and all. Estate is fascinating to me. I expected a stowaway there. Um, I At that point, I definitely agree with buying the third to last province. Generally good province to have.
Yeah, Province seems like the best card on this board.
Kayoshi just stopping here, which seems sensible. Definitely province here. Do you buy an estate as well? I'm gonna say no.
Yeah.
It's like an estate is going to protect you versus province double duchy. I don't think Rubesti is likely to do province double duchy in one turn. And keeping the coffers protects you against dudding and giving your opponent 2 turns. Now all you got to do is find 5 next turn to finish off the game.
Yep, I agree with that. I think it's likely enough that you really are not going to hit 8 next turn without having any of the coffers or with having two fewer coffers. And the chance that Rubesty hits 16, it could happen, I suppose, but
18
maybe not.
with 3-5.
Like it's bad enough where I'm not sure that that's true.
They do go for the estate. I mean, they might get punished here, but this map maker is liable to save the turn, given that your opponent's almost certainly got to activate it for you.
Yeah, I mean, Rubesty you would think almost certainly has to green, although there's just buying an estate from Rubesty's position is not a
Yeah.
convincing play.
But Rubesty also was the one who started out with the 5-2 open with witch, found it turn 3, all that was lovely. But Kayoshi managed to keep the curse split to, I believe, 5-5.
Yeah, I think
And
it was
if you can,
5-5. Kayoshi had a second witch first as well.
yeah, if you can get more of the other good stuff while adding witches, and then not manage to be behind on curses, well then it makes sense in your head. I don't know how they managed to split the curses evenly. Maybe I should have paid more attention to that. But the
Yeah,
one theoretical, I mean, also Kayoshi is player one. You gotta keep that in mind. You know, they have one extra turn to do the thing.
yeah, it was player one, and Rubesty had trouble hitting 5 to get that second witch again, which I think sort of is what evened
Yeah.
it out.
Okay. Well, this looks like a much faster kingdom.
Yeah, this will move.
uh, You got Recruiter, which you can just open with Guaranteed. So you got all the villages you need. You got Bridge Troll. Hostery gets things going super duper fast. The one tragic thing here is it looks like it might be too fast for EXO even. That's a real crying shame.
Yeah, I think it's almost certainly
Um,
too fast for EXO, which is a rare thing to say, but you've got Recruiter and Spice Merchant doing your trashing for you and Bridge Trolls to play, so.
so I think on 3-4, Silver Recruiter, 4-3, Recruiter, and probably nothing if you just have 2 coppers um,
Yeah,
in
I
your
don't
turn
think you
2
borrow
hand.
twice.
Yeah. Moneylender,
Moneylender is
exciting.
the most surprising to me. I would certainly have taken Spice Merchant over Moneylender, although I would have just
God, no.
borrowed for Recruiter.
I'm Team Moneylender every day of the week if I have to choose between those two. Um, Moneylender versus Spice Merchant, I think is no contest for Moneylender. I think the competition here is Recruiter.
Really,
Um,
I would have just preferred the
yeah.
cycling, and then I can just borrow to hit 5.
Yeah, I mean, like, you might hit 5 off of it, but Moneylender does that. And if you're buying Borrow, you're kind of negating a lot of the cycling. I would open Recruiter immediately, in part because you want to trash the estates here, and then Hostery is an easy way to kind of deal with the coppers. And so I like just the immediate Recruiter. I don't hate the Moneylender, but the idea of you hit 5 next turn and then you buy a Recruiter. Um, but yeah, I like Kayoshi's opening better. If I had to pick one.
Yeah, I don't hate the Moneylender, but I do hate it relative to just borrowing for the Recruiter.
Mm-hmm. All right, Spice Merchant. So Spice Merchant for Kayoshi turn 3, I think that makes sense to me. You got the Recruiter in your deck already. You don't need to hit the price point so much. You just want to cycle to the Recruiters you already got. The turn 3 by Spice Merchant looks pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. And then we see Moneylender as well from Kayoshi, which it seems reasonable here. Just get your coins that way, and then you can buy hostelries and bridge trolls. And right, the recruiter is such a warping card because everything that normally Moneylender becomes bad later, but here it's perfectly fine source of 4 actions.
Are you buying Hostery here, or Bridge Troll, or what?
I would think it's probably hostelry time at this point. Um,
That's my inclination as well. Still got 2 estates left to trash. Hostery just keeps you playing the Recruiter as often as possible. Nobles, it's draw. Got a little close on villages, but you never know.
yeah, I think Nobles is quite poor in this spot, but you will have villagers. It is draw. It's certainly defensible as a purchase.
Mm-hmm. 4 for Kayoshi. Um, Throne Room, I dig it. All right, this has got to be Burst Troll, right?
Yeah, you've got the draw already. You've got recruiter nobles in your next hand. I don't think there's any reason to have it be anything else.
Yeah. Which, in case it wasn't obvious, obviously the direction this kingdom is going is eventually you play all the bridge trolls and then you win because provinces cost 0. Or you throw in bridge trolls and you double the effect, and then duchies cost 0 and you pile duchies. Something with a bunch of bridge trolls is the end game. And so as soon as you can afford to play bridge trolls, you start adding the bridge trolls.
Yeah, and throne rooms, work as to help speed that along quite a bit too.
Yeah. Now, one downside of adding the bridge trolls early is once you get bridge trolls in play, your recruiters don't generate very many villagers anymore. And Rubesty, I think, still has 2 estates left. So he's one of those not going to make too many villagers.
Yeah, that is a real downside, especially because Rubesty is cutting it pretty close in terms of having villages in the deck.
Yeah, we're just barely able to play all this. I expect a Hoth rebuy from Rubesty this turn, probably. It's a little awkward because you want to add a second bridge troll now. Given that your first one's going to be stuck in play. But I think they might just need the villages, right?
Yeah, it does really need the villages. You could think about just recruiting like Moneylender next turn in order to get the villages, but that's pretty
Yeah.
expensive too.
Yes, I think either like just by Hoth 3 is option A. You could do like Bridge Troll Throne Room if you borrow for it, and then Throne Room is adding a village. Some risky shuffles there. Maybe just Bridge Troll Hoth 3, same goal. I don't think it's pretty thin. I think maybe you could just go Bridge Troll in one of the 2 villages, and then you're hoping to find your recruiter or a village plus nobles on top. There's not too many cards in decks, so that's likely to happen.
Yeah, that does seem like those are really the things you need. Those adding both of those cards would be outstanding. So, and Rubesty agrees.
Yep, sure enough. It's not an exciting hand to see, though. Somewhat predictable. This is the downside: is you're running a risk by borrowing there with no villagers. But this turn could still, in theory, go somewhere. The right draws off the Oasis.
Yeah, it could go somewhere. Good, probably still the right thing to have done, because you still have the village that you needed. But we'll be sad if it doesn't kick off, of course, for Rubesty.
She's got
Well,
it done too. All right. Well, this is not a good draw. No way to salvage that. Just play the Moneylender and buy another throne room, I suppose.
Yep. A little bit deserved for Rubesty for not. Like, there were some lines earlier turns to have added more village and had more villagers in the deck, but played the more aggressive thing and ended up paying for it a bit.
Looking at this starting hand for Rubesty, I think you start with Throne Room Recruiter. I think I would rather recruit the Spice Merchant and kill the last copper with Moneylender, probably. And then you're hoping to find the estate and kill that as well.
Yeah, I think that seems sensible. Could play Spice Merchant first for draw if you were really
Yeah, the
ready
other
to
option, like
finish
you
all
could
everything.
draw with Spice Merchant, then Throne Recruiter and kill the Moneylender in the estate is fine too. I think I would have rather you have enough draw. You have more draw than you need. You got a nobles down there. I would have rathered, I think, recruit the Spice Merchant, kill the Moneylender next turn, and you're just making 1 more money this turn is the upside of that.
Yeah,
I guess 3 more money if you're using the Spice Merchant for draw. Like if you got the draw you need, which I think you do, then the other line means more money.
you sort of would have had the draw you need. You would have played Recruiter, you'd be trashing a spice merchant right now, and then you'd be playing an Oasis, maybe throning an Oasis. So it would have been a little dodgy to play the recruiter first. Or you would have thrown the recruiter, sorry. So that's pretty
You see
irrelevant.
2 more cards. So either you find the nobles, or you play the Oasis, and then you draw the nobles, or maybe the Oasis is, or maybe the nobles is in the bottom, but in which case, then you drew everything you needed anyway. I presume you go throne, recruiter, bridge troll. Nope, they are play the Oasis first. Given this hand, I think you just pitched the recruiter probably, and then throne, double bridge troll. Everything costs 0, and you don't have any villagers, but you can add like a bajillion thrones and hostages and such to your deck.
Yeah, that seems
Bottom
quite
3
good to me.
are. See, I don't think you can afford to borrow here because your bottom 3 are nobles, moneylender, estate, which definitely runs the risk of deading. But if you throw in 2 bridge trolls and buy a bunch of hostelries and like 1 more bridge troll, your odds of drawing a hostelry or a recruiter off the top are very high. Or even a throne room would save your turn because you could throw in the nobles. So my vote is just stop here, throw in both bridge trolls, and then buy like bridge troll, 2 throne rooms, and a hostelry or something along those lines, I think. And then you're very likely to find something that keeps your turn going next turn off the top.
That seems reasonable to
In
me.
fact, I think the only conceivable draw that wouldn't would be if you drew specifically your Spice Merchant and the new Bridge Troll. Because everything else keeps your turn alive.
So it elects to discard the bridge troll, which I would assume means you're going to play this recruiter and hope to find your nobles.
Yeah, this works as well. I wouldn't throw in the recruiter at this point. But if you play the recruiter, you have a 2/3 chance of drawing your nobles, and you're happy to trash either of the other cards, moneylender or estate, whatever you drew with it. Then you could draw with the nobles. Then you could do the throne bridge troll anyway. The downside of doing it this way is if you don't find the nobles, if nobles is on bottom, you don't get back around to that bridge troll, and then you don't get to throne it. Upside of this line is you get to trash an extra thing, and you get the junk off the top. I guess the really conservative thing to do would just be to throw in the recruiter. You get 2 trashes in, you keep some villagers. The downside of that is you're only so they are going to throw in the recruiter. The downside of this is you're not getting as many bridge troll plays. You play bridge troll 3 times instead of 4. Just like imagine how many more things you would have with a 4th bridge troll play. Everything costs 0 instead of 1.
Yeah, it's
You have so
it's
many
three
things.
more it's 3 more cards basically right here.
Yeah, I think they're underplaying this.
And you leave the same number of thrones down in play. I mean, it does clear the stuff off the top, but like you said, next turn was so likely to happen because the number of stop cards that you would have had in the deck would be basically none. It'd basically just be Spice Merchant and whatever bridge trolls you buy.
And they have to borrow to see 1 bridge troll. And I'll point out, back at the start of the turn, I do think there was a case for throwing the recruiter there, but then that line still plays a moneylender at the end of it, so you'd have like 4 money to work with instead of 1. And so then if you only had 3 bridge trolls played, you'd still have enough money to buy a bunch of stuff. They managed to not make the money, but also not throw in the bridge trolls. And they didn't even use the nobles, sadly. I think the attack hurts like hell. The bridge troll, the bridge troll attack can be significant. The most annoying thing about bridge troll a lot of times is like if you get your bridge troll, the samurai attack. How crazy is Samurai? Uh yeah, no, sorry, I'm voting crazy. So like, imagine you both have 6, and you buy Samurai and they buy Nobles. You made them draw -2 cards, and they played their Noble and they drew 2 cards. And now you've got a Samurai in play, and they've got a Nobles in their deck. If there were a way to gain and play Samurai, then there might be spots where I would consider it, like getting in a situational attack and a spot where you really need your opponent to dud and didn't need Nobles anymore. But yeah, I'm gonna say no to Samurai. The money's obviously of very little value in a King of the Bridge Troll, so it'd just be a one-shot discard attack. And I think that's just not worth it when you could buy a one-shot draw card that undiscards you.
Yeah, I could see the gain and play angle if your opponent, right? Because then you can't react and just buy an extra draw. Um,
Yeah.
but here you could. So the default of thinking that Samurai just stinks probably holds up just fine here.
Oh, this is just a mistake, isn't it?
Two halved
So,
on what?
so Kayoshii had an Oasis in their hand, and they throned the Recruiter, which meant they couldn't play the Oasis. If they played the Oasis first, discarded a card, then throw the Recruiter, they would still draw their whole deck, and they'd have one more money left to show for it.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear mistake then, especially because that money goes a long way uh, at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah, like one extra coin here is like a whole extra throne room. Pretty significant. I mean, as Kayoshi, I think the card you most want right now is one more Bridge Troll. So now you borrow for the Bridge Troll, I guess.
Yeah, you really just need the bridge troll.
The 3 Bridge Trolls all being in play at the moment is really awkward. Because if you had any Bridge Trolls coming out of play, you could add a Bridge Troll by just adding a Throne Room and then throning a Bridge Troll. But they won't have any targets for that unless they buy Bridge Troll here. Alright, they buy a Silver as well, which I'm going to say probably makes sense. They have almost no stop cards in their deck.
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense, although right, it's already getting pretty dodgy. Do you want to add a third silver? Because you've got a bridge troll and a silver and another silver. You're
That's a
getting
good question. Let's
pretty.
think about this. So you borrowed and you have no draw in your deck. So you're gonna have a 4-card hand at the end of the turn. You're gonna have a Throne Room and a Bridge Troll. Oasis is -1 draw, and Silver. Yeah, I'm not sure they can sports this actually. Thinking about it, maybe I don't like the Silver after all. I guess another line you could consider would be buy a copper here. I was thinking you recruit the Spice Merchant at this point, but if you buy a copper, or I guess silver is effectively copper, the Spice Merchant trashes a copper, or a silver in this case, then you recruit the Oasis, and then your final hand would be Throne, Bridge Troll, 2 silvers, but then you need 1 more silver. No, I think the 2 silvers checks out. I think 2 silvers is actually better than 1 silver, because if you buy 1 silver, you can't draw everything. Ironically, if you buy 2 silvers, you can draw everything, because now you can play your Spice Merchant for +2 cards, which is effectively turning Spice Merchant back into a cantrip, is how I think about it. Spice Merchant with no touches is a dead card. Spice Merchant with a silver is like a cantrip, because it draws 2, but you had to add an extra card to get the draw 2, so it effectively draws 1. So this line plus recruit the Oasis, I think, checks out. And then your final hand is going to be Throne Bridge Troll, 2 silvers, and then you buy a bunch of stuff like Nobles next turn, and you're fine.
And all of that would be probably more relevant to the game if Rubesty didn't have 6 buys here and the ability to buy, I guess, anything, although it cannot have costed 6 originally, unless you borrow.
Yeah, it's actually awkward because you probably want another Nobles for draw here.
You have a
Probably worth
Nobles on
borrowing
top of
for
your
even.
deck, right? For Rubesty?
Yeah. So you have 1 Throned Bridge Troll in play. How many do you need to play to win next turn? Not super clear. Obviously, in theory, if you play 8 bridge trolls, you empty the provinces. That's probably asking a little bit much. Usually, it's more practical to lower piles a bunch than pile out with bridge trolls being contested.
Yeah, although with throne room, less so,
Yeah.
because you only need to get. I mean, you still need to get a lot of bridge troll plays next turn for Rubesty, but if you took like two bridge trolls, three throne rooms, and a nobles,
So they need to play 3 bridge trolls 3 times each. So they only need to buy one more bridge troll, then they have 3 bridge trolls. And they buy a bunch of thrones and nobles. And they might actually just be able to hit 8 bridge troll plays in total.
it seems pretty likely to me, really, to be able to get to the eight bridge troll plays.
Yeah, I think one noble. Oh, they just stop here. I thought like a nobles and 2 more thrones. Um, does this do it? I think this does it. If you play nobles plus recruiter, you draw your deck. They can trash their oasis, and then they have 3 bridge trolls and 3 thrones. I think this will be a win for Rubesty next turn.
Yeah, it must be why they just stopped as well, figuring I know I'm gonna draw everything next turn, and I don't want to add stuff that will make me have to draw more things.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking adding like nobles and thrones made you more likely to draw, but maybe it makes you less likely because I'm not sure exactly, but probably either of these lines leads to a win. And they just looked at the first one, and they're like, that will win, and I did the thing that I thought of first.
Yeah, the nobles. I mean, the nobles pretty clearly makes you hit borrow, so you can see how that could maybe lead to a dud. And the thrones, if you don't add the nobles, uh, you know, maybe I would probably see that borrowing for nobles and adding throne. I like that line too, but you can see the argument for just stopping like Rubesty did.
As Kayoshi, you're hoping your opponent has a dud, which is unlikely because they got a nobles on top of their deck. But you're not gonna click resign. Probably, I think the correct play for Kayoshi, I think, involves just aggressively lowering the nobles and the bridge trolls and throne room piles. Because if your opponent gets a full turn, you're losing anyway, and so you're hoping they have some dud, and then you can win the following turn. So I'm not too worried about keeping piles at a reasonable number.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I think the problem for Kayoshi is it's probably still pretty difficult to empty, even if you have a turn next turn. But that certainly has to be what you're going for. It's a little bit difficult because you can't lower too much because even a dud for Rubisty is going to look pretty solid.
Um, I think either a throne or a bridge troll here. They say neither. So buying buying nothing there, I don't think makes a whole lot of. So why wouldn't you at least buy a hostelry for free? I would again. I wouldn't worry about piles too much, but they seem worried about piles. But like nothing can't be better than just a free hostelry, right?
Yeah, I would have been
Or
worried
they.
about piles at like six cards left, not because if piles are at like eight, you're just going to lose on provinces.
Anyways, this is a win.
Yeah, once we play the Oasis.
It's actually not that common to see a bridge troll game end on provinces because if both players are playing correctly, they get contested, and you don't have enough buys to actually get to 8 provinces. And then usually what happens is you end on 3 pile or duchies or something like that. But I think Throne Room's made the difference here in making it actually feasible to get 8 bridge trolls in play.
Yeah, the throne room
This kingdom
definitely does
looks
that.
a whole lot weaker.
Yeah, no doubt. Villages being your major constraint.
Mm-hmm. In fact, there are no villages whatsoever. So, what do we do here? Hmm.
2-5 looks like a good thing to have started with. But I mean, this has got to be some variety of money, right? With like
Yeah,
barge and,
yeah,
and
yes.
jack and probably some.
So one thing I'm imagining is it feasible to draw your deck with figurine? So something like a pair of barges and like 1 to 2 schemes. I'm gonna say 2 schemes. The idea being you find at least one scheme in your 8 starting cards. You play the scheme. That lets you scheme the barge for the following turn. And then the other scheme gets discarded by your figurine and you're fine with that. And so like 2 barges, 2 schemes, a bunch of figurines, arrays to kill your estates. I think that's my deck. That might be countered by frigate money. I don't know if that's good enough to consider. Um, I mean, it only kind of counter because, like, obviously figurine still plays around frigate to some degree, but no.
Yeah, but you'd be discarding down to like several figurines in hand, which would be decent. Um, and it'd be hard for the money player to play frigates consistently at all. And the money player would not really want to play frigates. They'd be more interested in playing jacks and barges.
Yeah. But if we're not trying to draw a deck with figurines, I think something like Jack plus raise big money seems pretty good. Like 1 Jack, like 2 raises, and maybe get a barge later. Something like that seems reasonable.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I
Yeah.
think the actual best money line here does start with jack raise and go into the barges. Then you can add some figurines even if you're playing the money thing.
I don't know. It says if you skip the schemes, you don't have to discard. So the question is, like, you could just play like a straight up figurine deck that has like an action or two and just doesn't play it and discards it for plus buy, and then yeah, you never get hit by the frigate. And I mean, maybe that's the best if your opponent goes for frigate. I think if your opponent doesn't have a frigate, playing with barges is worth it. Well, so if you're playing with 2 barges, you still get hit by frigate because if you play a barge at the start of your turn, even if you next turn it, you still played a barge, and so you discard from 7 cards down to 4. Um, and obviously, the reason to play with the schemes, like if you, that deck gets hit with, if you're playing with barges, you get hit with frigate either way. The reason to play with the schemes is because obviously, if you draw the barge of frigate, you can't play it, and so you'd rather increase your chance of finding the barge, which scheme does. Still not guaranteed because like you could fail to find either your schemes, and then you still have some chance of drawing barge at the top next turn, but that's not guaranteed. But like a scheme or two makes it a lot more likely. Let's see. We have seen a frigate gained by Kayoshii, and Rubesty is playing with Jack. Frigate. All right. So we might actually see this interaction come to pass because Kayoshi's got the frigate and the barge, and or sorry, the figurine and the barge, and Rubesty's got the frigate.
Yeah, it looks like Kayoshi's
Uh,
playing pretty closely to the deck you described.
yeah, they haven't done a scheme yet. Uh, well, so they're not like locked in or anything. Like, if you see your opponent play with frigates, maybe you don't have the second barge and you just click figurine a little bit more monolithically, and then you just say, if I find my barge, I'll play it. If I don't, whatever. Um, you could always no, I was gonna say you could scheme a moat, but that doesn't actually work because you have to play the moat to scheme the moat. And if you play the moat, you're not playing the barge. Um,
Poor
that would kind
man.
of defeat the point. I don't know what you buy on 7 here. Presumably you want a figurine, and I guess you buy a free raise. No, we just want a silver and a scheme. Okay.
Silver Scheme to me seems a little bit, uh, I think to me, happy that you just saw the whole deck that turn and you think things are going to go a little bit better and you want to add more money. Whereas figurine, I think, is probably a little bit more in line with the reality that you're you're going to need the figurines to help draw things. But this is a decent
Um,
turn,
do
and
you
you
play
did
the
need more
barge
money.
normally? I think you draw with the barge. Hitting 5 sounds a lot better than hitting 4 to me, and you can top deck it with scheme anyway. Obviously, you're going to get hit by a frigate attack. It's like looking at this hand, it feels like, oh, it's next turn the barge, and then give the middle finger to the frigate. But I think it's actually worth drawing anyway. That's my answer.
Yeah, I agree with that. Chance that you find your figurine and are very happy is, well,
Kayoshii has more modest ambitions. Uh, yeah, I think you just play the jack normally. There's another frigate down there, so you're not unhappy to trigger the shuffle. You're probably going to hit a decent number anyway. You could seal it. I think I'd take a silver. I'll be honest, I don't see the point to a frigate here. I think there's a decent amount of damage versus the barge deck. Like if they have a next turn barge, the first action they play makes them discard like 3 cards. Uh, and yeah, it's not a terrible card in a big money deck anyway.
yeah, it plays nicer than the barge does with Jack as well. Um, so if you next turn the barge and draw the Jack, obviously that's unlikely to do much for you.
Yeah, so frigate does not play well, I don't think, with figurine at all. That's true. Um, I would certainly rather play with the figurine. Oh, well, as I say, my bad, Rubesty. Apparently wanted to prove me wrong. Um, we're playing the figurine plus frigate deck. Yeah. Now I'm confused. I'm very confused. So I thought I understood Rubesty's deck when it was just, all right, you're going to play Jack a bunch, you're going to a bunch of silvers, you had some frigates that'll be your terminal later on, and the goal is just have 8 money in hand, buy a province. And like, I don't know, Jack frigate money seems fine. The quote unquote engine with figurine is not that strong. I think that deck is all right. Obviously, you could just do the figurine thing, but if you're playing with figurines, I agree with the comment of like, why the frigates? Frigate and figurine don't seem like they played well together. But Rubesty's doing it all. 1 Jack, 2 frigates, and now some figurines. Uh, got some schemes and some goat herds.
Just good stuff. But yeah, I think it does seem to me like Rubesty was going to play money and then maybe saw Kayoshi draw deck and was like, man, maybe I need to try to play a little bit more here or something. But that's a bit of a
Yeah, I don't know. I
stretchy
don't know.
strategy if that's what has played out.
I agree with the comment about why did they not trash the estate?
You don't have.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
uh, Maybe you want to not power up opposing. Does Kayoshi have Goat Herd?
Yes, there's one on the deck,
Okay,
but
so I mean, it just seems wrong though. Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I forgot or something. Maybe they played the goat herd initially, thinking I'll just trash it with my jack in a second. But no, even then, like even if you plan on playing your jack, you'd rather trash the estate first so that your jack can draw 'em. I don't know. That didn't make any sense. Um,
Certainly can't be that it's a point.
all right, we popped a raise. Wait, I have a question. Why is their barge not in hand? Did they not have a scheme last turn? Oh, they didn't play a scheme last turn. That makes sense then. Because surely you draw here. You're not even getting hit by Frigate. You only have 4 cards in hand after. Nope. Still no. We're not drawing even with 1 card in hand.
Really collecting silvers over in Kayoshi's seat.
Yeah.
Have just as many
I'll
as
point out that, like,
Rubesty has now.
if they wanted the barge next turn, they could have just schemed the barge and then still played it next turn. Which, you know, like a duration barge is getting you to an 8-card hand, whereas a schemed barge is getting you to a 7-card hand. So, like, they're drawing 1 more next turn, but, like, they could have drawn 3 more this turn and 1 less next turn, and that seems like a pretty good trade-off to me.
So now we're
I'm getting confused again.
well, we're not really seeing either committed deck of those two
Yeah,
types. We're seeing them converge towards each other.
yeah. Like, all right, you got the barge, you got the figurines. I follow your game plan, and they're like, no, 2 figurines. Not even. They have 1 figurine. Kayoshii has 1 figurine in this whole deck. And then they cut and run for the provinces. Somehow, Rubesty has more of an engine going. And didn't find Rubesty has plenty of actions. Somehow managed to find none of them. Sadly.
Although wouldn't have been able to do too much with it. Just had 10 coins.
Yeah, maybe they were planning on buying province anyway. If you had plus buy, you could do like double figurine or something.
Yeah, I think we're into the greening part of this game now, I would imagine, for both players.
Seems like it, which confuses me. I don't know, if you're playing big money, figurine doesn't seem that great.
But you could
I would have
really
thought the
see,
goal of figurine was to draw.
Kayoshi was there. Kayoshi had control, and then has elected to play
Yep.
without it.
This game is just confusing me a lot. I'm gonna guess that bottom card is probably an action or something. Is that maybe the frigate on bottom?
Must be.
Obviously, if it is, you don't draw it. I want to say it is, right? Because they have 2 frigates. They only saw the 1. They had a bunch of actions down here, and they haven't seen the 2nd frigate. I feel like that's the frigate on the bottom of their deck, and so it makes sense to not play the deck normally because you just draw the frigate at the top. Would you be happy to leave there?
Yeah, I'm just trusting that they're smart, and that's why they played the jack like that.
What a duchy! I mean, this is a state of the game where duchy is reasonable, but about to trigger a shuffle. Top decking a frigate, or not a frigate, a figurine looked pretty good as well.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty decent case for figuring over Duchy heading into this shuffle at that point when your game's pretty much tied up. But the Duchy surely isn't super bad at that point in the game, at least.
Kayoshi decides that a raise is worse than nothing, which is not clear to me. Go either way on that. Obviously, in a normal circumstance, a raise is just better than nothing because it's like a one-shot border guard. You draw it, you pop it. But there are a lot of things that make that potentially less true here. You pop your raise, you power up your opponent's border guard. You could draw it dead with a barge or a figurine or something. There's reasons to think raise might be worse than nothing here.
Yeah, I'd probably say it's worse than nothing on the basis of powering up Goatherd alone.
But a duchy.
So you take Guaranteed Province here, or, well, just draw for it as Rubesty.
Was it a guaranteed province?
It was if you kept the scheme in hand and just figuring to discard the scheme. You had 7 before that. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I was counted wrong.
I mean, you could be right now. It's just wrong. Let's see, they had silver, 2 schemes figurine. They drew a gold. I don't think it was there.
Okay,
It could have been 6.
I counted magically.
Silver,
Then.
gold, 1 coin from figurine.
I'm guessing I counted Figurine as like a silver as well or something. Anyways, uh, strong. I don't know really what this end game is at this point. I mean, it's sort of a classic money end game. Do you draw for it here as kayoshi to try and get a duchy?
Absolutely draw with this barge, but every time I've said I would draw with this barge, Kayoshi has said no, next turn. I sure as heck would love to hit at least 5 for a duchy. You could buy an estate here, which keeps you safe-ish versus a province, but you lose to 10 and 2 buys. You'd also tie versus just 8. Duchy here would have saved you. As it turns out, they just drew hella money and managed to hit 8, which is even better.
Yep, good by all
Okay, so I believe
accounts.
that 3-0 for player 1, so 2-0 for Kayoshi, I believe, or 2-1 for Kayoshi, rather.
I'll have to agree with you on that.
That's a risky move.
Well,
Trusting me on the score.
well, the other move would be even more foolish, which would be to believe in myself.
Disagree. Kayoshi said something of surely great
We need a new
significance.
table. All
Oh
right.
yeah, probably. That makes sense. Um, we've crossed the hour threshold, which means the server resets.
I think I'm in the right place. Cool.
Kayoshi even very helpfully translated it. Okay, New Kingdom. So the villages are a little limited here. Your first copy of Crossroads is a village. Prince can also be a village. Um, draw Envoy. Bunch of terminals that are going to be tough to play. I don't know what you're doing here.
So yeah, Prince. I mean, if Prince is a village, you're just Princing like Ratcatcher or Crossroads. Um,
Yeah, you could Prince at Crossroads to start your turns. You've always got a village. I don't know. I'm not saying Prince is the move here. I'm just saying it is a village. Yeah, I mean, it could be the move maybe. Like, there's ways to hit 8 early here. Animal Fair is easy to gain early. You could get coffers with villain. I wouldn't rule out Prince.
but it does seem
I
like
don't know.
you're incentivized to build and draw and be somewhat consistent because I mean blockade here. I mean, you're going to be able to thin really easily.
If I were playing big money, which I wouldn't rule out, it's like open with a blockade, trash once or twice by blockading cemeteries, and then you turn your blockade and whatever other action cards you bought into Animal Fair, and then your deck is like, I don't know, 2 Animal Fairs, 2 Crossroads or something, and you start buying provinces pretty early. I can see that working. The payoff for building is there's distant lands, so you could play distant lands and score. This is a tricky kingdom. I don't know what's best here. We'll see what the players decide.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see the money being competitive. Just like you said, the villages here are pretty awkward to fold in, but thinning is so easy that I would be very surprised if it wasn't worth some element of keeping control, even if you're going with the more direct, just get some animal fairs and some crossroads and buy green approach.
Um, to me, the opening seems pretty automatic. Blockade, rat catcher looks good to me, regardless of whatever else you're doing. Ooh, oh, fascinating. We trash a copper and buy crossroads.
makes it more
Um,
likely to play the blockade.
yeah, so I mean, Crossroads is a card you're going to want anyway. I expect to still see the estates trashed, and that's just saying, I want this Crossroads to draw. I prefer the rat catcher, but this is not a crazy thing to do. They passed up on a free ghost there. I think they're a little bit too quick to click that Crossroads, weren't they?
Yeah, I would say
Blockade
so.
gain. Hmm.
I mean,
So
there's
they could have kept Crossroads in hand, gained Cemetery, trashed Copper, Haunted Mirror, Estate. I would take the ghost there, I think.
I can see the argument for not taking the ghost just because ghost kind of stinks. At least, it doesn't do too much for you. I mean, it's a pretty good card, of course, but it doesn't do too much for you. And this allows you to get the blockade in hand for next turn and trash out this turn while having all this more stuff in your deck. You've got the
Yeah,
extra blockade, the extra crossroads now. And you would have only trashed
I,
two
I would
cards.
I would be very happy to have a ghost in my hand from a very early point. That being said, I mean, obviously this turn 4 does not benefit from having a cemetery in your hand, and does benefit from having blockade. So that is something to its credit. But like this hand does not look great to cemetery to me. Like you really want to be hitting your states early, I would think, for the most part, not your coppers.
I think estates I mean, I think coppers are a fine thing. I think really the bigger thing is just to trash more cards. And this path trashes two more cards than the other one did.
Two more, one more, right?
Well, if you didn't draw with the crossroads, you would have only been able to trash two.
Three.
Three. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But now here, well, doesn't elect to trash. Okay, so it just
Oh
wants to
no.
keep estates and just go crossroads heavy. Which with the blockades, you can make that work.
I really enjoy trying to draw with crossroads, uh, but from my experience with trying to draw the crossroads, I learned that it often comes back to bite you in the butt because it's a very unreliable engine. So I'd love to see if this works out, but it's a risky strategy to say the least. You have to line up your crossroads and a bunch of green cards in your starting hand, and then find some more crossroads, get somewhere. We'll see.
Yeah, it becomes dodgy quickly as soon as you start adding cards that aren't green, which you
Yeah,
want to
just like
do.
the failure cases can be really bad. Like you trashed all your coppers and none of your estates, which is normally a recipe for hitting terrible price points. So if you don't manage to draw your deck and find all your stuff, you're uh, in a sticky situation.
You are. Although the blockade, like getting to add extra stuff to your starting hand, is the antidote for those problems. You're not excellently able to do that here, but you're able to do that a little bit. And your payload's pretty dense with blockades and animal fairs. I could see the argument for do you want to try an angle now as Rubesty for that Prince? Because that's another way to add consistency to this Crossroads deck.
Gain and play the ghost here. Uh, let's see. If you gain and play the ghost, can you also have a target? So the line would be play blockade, trash like copper and haunted mirror, discard animal fair, gain ghost, play the crossroads. You would draw the animal fair. Yeah, I think that sounds pretty good to me actually. Um, you would draw the animal fair back. You could play the animal fair, and then you could buy an action card, and whatever action you buy becomes the target for the ghost. I dig it. Now you'd have to not trash any estates in that line. For exactly the reason that answers the question that was just asked. If you trash any estates, you don't draw enough. If you trash just the copper and the haunted mirror, then you have 3 estates in hand, and you would draw whatever that bottom card is, plus the ghost, plus the animal fair. Oh, oh no, I was wrong. What I missed was exactly what Holt pointed out. There's a curse on the cemetery pile, so it's an extra card you'll gain, which means that does make it a lot less appealing, doesn't it? Because that line only looks great if you find the ghost and the animal fair, and you're only 1/3 likely to draw the ghost and the animal fair. Yeah, I totally missed the curse detail.
Yeah, that curse is a big deal. It's interesting that Rubesty elects just to take the cemetery and put the curse back on it, really.
Yeah, interesting. So, comparing the line that Rubesty took versus the line that was being considered, they take the cemetery anyway. They trash the copper anyway. Actually, I'm very confused by that line. Okay, so they still didn't want the ghost. My thinking is maybe they're really worried about dudding, and this line lets them play Crossroads' Way of the Frog to guarantee they have a Crossroads on top. Whereas they could have discarded the Crossroads to get a free ghost, but at the risk of maybe you don't find either of your Crossroads in your starting hand and then you're sad.
Yeah, it looks like Rubesty's very much playing this not dudding line. But here top decks distant lands with Way of the Frog, which is clever. But it seems like it's getting really scared of not dudding at this point in a deck that's pretty likely to have green cards show up early on. This I would have taken the ghost, I think, here this turn in Rubesty's position.
Hard to say because again, this is just a very confusing kingdom. But yeah, I've been a little flummoxed by a few of their decisions.
It does draw every turn though, which a deck that has that quality is hard to hate too much, especially when it's the deck that is otherwise ahead.
Yeah, I like in broad strokes what they're doing with the Crossroads and such. It's a deck that you really want to root for. Like I said, it's a fun deck to build, requires a bunch of counterintuitive stuff. It's a very risky deck to build. Um, Kayoshi's deck looks a little bit more straightforward, I think. The trouble for Rubesty, of course, is like they got a deck, they draw their deck, but then their deck is all victory cards, and so the benefit of drawing your deck is not that high. Um,
Yeah, it needs more payload, but doesn't have the terminal space for it to be animal fairs right now.
yeah. Unfortunately, did not find the Haunted Mirror in time to easily gain and play the Ghost here. Um, Surely you're playing this Crossroads next. Oh no, they're stopping. What are these bottom three? So the bottom. I'm really confused. The bottom three has a Haunted Mirror and a Crossroads, right? Yeah, I don't think you wanted to top deck another Crossroads. You want to make sure you find enough green cards. I don't know what the last card is. Is it a third cemetery, probably? I think the bottom three is Crossroads, Cemetery, Haunted Mirror.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Right, gets a second animal fair. I would assume that we're angling towards adding a prince with
Think so?
Rubesty, but
Who's to say?
I mean, I think it's probably not necessary for consistency. And I guess the terminal space doesn't help that much, although It is nice to play an extra animal fair at the end of things, or a
Yeah,
blockade.
both the I think I want a prince here. I mean, again, I've been wanting the ghost for a while, and a ghost is just like a double prince every other turn. So who knows? But plus one extra card is a big deal when you're trying to line up a precious number of crossroads and estates and you're starting him to kick off. And the plus one action is also a big deal when your payload is animal fairs and blockades, which are all terminal. So if you can swing playing a prince here, it sure looks nice.
Yeah, it does. Especially because you can't really afford to play Crossroads 3 times before you play your other stuff, at least on your non-ghost
I got,
turns.
I've got a new plan. What if we ghost a prince? You gain ghost this turn, then you buy prince and ghost it next turn. If your ghost hits prince, your ghost stays out of play forever, but you get 2 princes in play immediately. And because you played the prince at the start of turn, you also get to immediately resolve its effect, which is kind of nifty.
Right, so you still get to play the action cards. Uh,
It could go horribly if you don't find your actions. Um,
you could blockade, one thing. I
yeah,
think
you could at least blockade a crossroads.
I think you could pretty reasonably do that path. It's certainly extremely cute, and
Yeah.
for that at least, I like it quite a bit.
Rubesty does seem to be pursuing the more fanciful deck here, so it would be in keeping with the theme. Okay, they're once again pausing at a point that I find curious.
I mean, it seems like you play this crossroads, right? You can
Well, so
you're thinking about frogging it,
what
perhaps.
what are the bottom five?
Yeah,
Because like
yeah,
one consideration is that if your deck just has nothing value in it, which like it's mostly green cards, you might just stop here. Like I think the bottom five are what, an animal fair, 3 estates, and a crossroads. In
right.
which case, was I right about that?
There was at least an animal fair. An animal fair was the
What they
thing
drew
that
is
you
consistent
wanted.
with my prediction. I think they haven't, but like, did you want the animal fair all that badly?
I guess
So
I
like they
suppose
could have
no.
stopped here and played animal fair plus blockade, and then they would have had a crossroads and 3 green cards guaranteed on top. Um, they drew one instead. So now their top 2 cards are estates. They frogged one crossroads. Don't know why you don't just play this animal fair, right? Like you're not frogging it. You don't want to find the animal fair on top. Play it, and you buy. I don't know. There's nothing I like super want to buy, but I don't want that on top of my deck. I don't think that doesn't make sense to me.
No, I don't like it on top either. I mean, the it's so difficult to kick off in Rubesty's position because you need the crossroads not just to have enough to kick off. You need them to draw big, because you need to get your terminals and play them. Maybe the thought is I just really want to play that animal fair. That's what I really want to find anyways. But
Yeah,
I
like
don't know that
I'm
that's
down with
true.
not buying anything. I guess there's nothing like I super wanted a rat catcher at least be marginally better than nothing, but I still don't think I would top deck it even if I wasn't playing it. Prince, yeah, there we go. So we didn't find the prince, but you could blockade, gain something nice, and then prince it next turn.
This is a pretty nice position for Rubesty to be in. Able to hit 8 and
Um,
play the ghost here. The
yeah,
ghost will just hit a crossroads, but I mean that will help
yeah.
you.
Last we're not gonna get to ghost the prince, but so be it. Uh, a little unfortunate, I think, for the crossroads to be the very bottom card. Like you would actually rather have the green cards on top. Normally, you're happy if your ghost skips past all your green.
It's a little sad, but I think should have no problems drawing everything with. Well, I guess it'll take one additional crossroads play maybe now.
Okay. I might just want one more prince. I
I can see the argument.
mean, you could buy a province here, but you don't super need to buy a province. And yeah, I just want another prince. Final answer. Nope, we just want a province. These players are definitely on the provincier side of things. We've seen a number of games, game 1 and game 3, where they greened earlier than one would expect.
Yeah, I
As
wonder how much of
kayoshii,
that
I think
is.
you prince the envoy, and
I mean, Envoy's a
yeah,
pretty nice card to prince usually, and I think here is could be an exception, but is I don't think it is.
kayoshii also still doesn't have a ghost.
The ghost is really nice before you get the prince. Once you get the prince, I mean, you can
It's
still
nice
do
in
a few
general.
sort of clever things with it. I mean, you can ghost animal fairs and stuff. I mean, it's useful certainly.
It's just like two free plays that start a turn in a deck that's kind of rickety. Empty cemetery for sure. So emptying cemetery turns on the plus buy. Question is, how much do you benefit from that? Yeah, I think emptying it here is nice because it means you can buy an animal fair and turn one of these crossroads into an animal fair.
Yeah, seems quite good. Take a prince and an animal fair here, really.
Yeah, still like Prince. Um, if we're on the greening path, I guess province is fine. Distant lands plus crossroads, for example, looked good as well.
Yeah, province seems fine. I mean, Rubesty is way ahead to the point where this resign is extremely sensible.
Um, an interesting deck. I still find a lot of the the decisions curious, but it panned out pretty well. Well played to Rubesty.
Yeah, that was well
Um,
played. I could have seen a little bit more aggression being merited, but there was really no need for it. So I think it was pretty well done.
yeah. All right, what do we got now?
This looks pretty
Another
standard
no
torture.
trashing kingdom. Sorry, what was that?
I was just gonna say it looks pretty standard torturer being torturous.
Yeah. So nobody get rid of curses. So you play torture a bunch. Presumably that means you win the game. Uh, there is a bit of room to play around that. Like if you have a hunting lodge in hand, you can easily discard down to one card, play hunting lodge, and draw back up. So that means you can easily play through two torture attacks just fine. And then only the third one really makes you take curses, provided you have hunting lodge in your starting hand. Uh, so it'll take some time, I think, before the torture starts hitting. But then eventually you play like 3 or 4 tortures and your opponent gains a bunch of curses all at once. Or you just hit them at any turn when they didn't manage to find a hunting lodge. How do you open here?
I would.
Fisherman guard dog open.
Yeah, Fisherman Darda looks pretty nice. You're gonna expect to have a lot of torturer hands.
I was thinking about importer. If you, we'll see what they do here, but you could potentially buy something turn 2, activate Band of Nomads, and trigger a shuffle, which is likely to top deck one of your importers. Um, I, this is an opening I have to think about for a bit. There's a bunch of stuff that looks all right, and Band of Nomads adds a lot of complications, triggering that either turn 1 or turn 2 to create various shuffles. The 5-2 decision, probably a lot simpler, right? I think you just buy Torture and activate Band of Nomads immediately.
I'd have to read Band of Nomads. It's on my ban list because exactly this reason where
Uh,
you have to spend all this time thinking.
it creates some very thinky openings where like you're triggering a draw off of your buy, not because you have any value of drawing extra card at that moment, but because it changes the way the shuffles work in a way that could potentially benefit you. So Torture seems like the best 5 here to me, I would think. Not looking to get a bunch of golds early, so Soothsayer and Bandit, I think, are just worse. If you buy Torture, you trigger a shuffle, which means, first off, there's a 1 in 7 chance you draw the Torture off the top, which is great. But if you don't, then your Torture is going to be 5-6 odds in your turn 3 hand, which is also great. And because you triggered a shuffle, that $2 hand, like let's say you still hit 2 next turn, which is not unlikely, you now have nothing in your discard, so you could buy a Fisherman on 2. Whereas if you don't trigger a shuffle, you buy nothing turn 2. So I think there's just a lot of upside to triggering that shuffle. Torture, Bandit Nomad seems pretty clear to me. I think the trap here to me is Soothsayer. You'll probably give out more of the curses, but a deck full of gold sounds a lot worse than a deck full of torturers. The 3-4 opening, I still have no idea. There's a million things that look worth considering to me. And yet the player with the 5-2 is thinking, and the player with the 3-4 clicked pretty quickly. Curious.
Yeah, I'll have to take your word on all that Band of Nomad stuff, but I mean, that sounded like a good outcome. Uh, can certainly see the argument for importer stuff off the three over Fisherman Guard Dog, but I think I like Fisherman Guard Dog because that stuff stays better longer. But it's a little bit unclear
I
how
mean,
you
importers.
really want to angle torturers and hunting lodges, balancing those as you build.
I think importer still seems like a good card to me. There's a bunch of 5s you want to gain. It's payload that you can play in the action phase, so it plays all right with hunting lodge and guard dog. It's terminal intensive, and like, you only have so many villages here, so it's not like super better than just playing with silvers. How crazy is double importer? I don't think that's crazy. It's hard to say anything here is too crazy. There's a lot of stuff to consider, but like double importer, trigger a shuffle, you're gonna find an importer and you'll be pretty happy. I don't believe in the Soothsayer. I don't like it.
Yes, but say
Um,
how crazy is Soothsayer?
yeah. Um, when I said it's hard to call anything too crazy, I meant on the 3-4 where there's a million options. 5-2 I thought was just automatic torture. Um, Soothsayer opening. Are you playing big money? What? No way.
It can't be, but you could say that I'm going to be playing the Torturer deck, and I'm going to be the one with golds, and you're going to be the one with curses.
But I'm gonna be the one playing the torture deck if you draw me a bunch of cards and get me to torture sooner.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not
The
convinced
prerequisite
of
of the
that.
torture deck is having the torturers.
Uh,
Like, look at this hand. Even you got 2 money, and then oops, you put a gold into your discard. No fisherman for you. I hate this Soothsayer. I don't like it one bit.
I don't like it. I would be worried about it beating me, because it just actually losing the curse split significantly, and like not being able to afford stuff if the shuffles went really poorly. But yeah, I would much rather just take the curses, buy torturers, have torturers. There's Villa here, right? Like it's plenty easy to make this thing work.
Yeah, I would expect the deck that plays Soothsayer to probably win the curse split, but like 6-4 or something maybe. And then the downside is you didn't really get much deck control out of it, whereas the player that played all the tortures has a deck that I'd rather have at the end of all that. And I'd be happy to have 2 more curses if it means I have a much more functional deck. Oh my god, that's a absolute disaster of a shuffle, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the problem with the play torturers by Villa plan. is Sometimes it does this.
uh, that's a truly they drew two. Is that all of their terminals? They just like drew all of their actions off the top with 1 money too little to buy Villa. That's not a thing you can play around. That's just truly tragic shuffle.
Yeah, I think it made sense to draw there. Didn't make sense to pass the turn. Uh, but it was really bad to have put those cards on top.
Like you're likely to get to 4 and buy a villa and play an importer. You're not likely to draw all of your other actions. They just had an absolutely horrible draw. Villa. Oh, that's clever. I like that. So they had 2 torturers down here, and they bought the villa and triggered banded nomads for the +1 card effect. Um, so it's like cavalry at home. And it worked out. They drew one of their 2 torturers, which drew the other torturer, and then all's right with the world.
Yeah, it was very, very clever and also good.
I like playing the sheepdog there. Obviously, there's no benefit to drawing cards, but you had a bunch of bad cards coming up, and so you'd be happy to draw 2 more of them and get back around to these torturers. I think I'm gaining Hunting Lodge here. Could just be another torturer. Yep, Hunting Lodge makes sense. Obviously, you could gain a villa because you know that you're going to need a villa anyway, but I'd rather buy the villa and gain the nice 5 cost thing, shuffle it in. As it turns out, this is a good reason not to gain the villa preemptively, is there's no need to buy a villa here if you don't even have another action card to play. I don't think you're doing the desperate villa trigger bandit nomads thing here. That made sense the specific turn they did it because they had very few cards left and a bunch of them were torturers, so the odds that drew a torturer were super high. No, not you too.
Oh, we see the follow. That's an odd. It's especially odd, I
do
think, to
you
see it added like turn 8.
do you need golds? I mean,
You need to
maybe that's
draw
an
your
okay pick.
cards first before the
I,
curses are gone.
I don't know. Like for me, the payload is just play a bunch of importers, and there's a million things that cost 5 that I'm happy to gain. That Soothsayer, I'll say, is at least infinitely more defensible than Rubesty Soothsayer. Like you added a Soothsayer at the point where you're starting to draw your deck and maybe are okay with goals. I still would have taken the Soothsayer there, but like that only irks me a lot rather than shatters me in my core.
I'm pretty irked by it. Because I think you're
Yeah,
because I
I'm
think
still
in
irked. I'm not saying it's okay. It deserves shame and scorn. It is just dwarfed in magnitude by the Soothsayer opening.
I see it as Kayoshi was close to being to the point where you could actually say, oh, they're going to be drawing consistently here coming up, and now you have Soothsayer, so now that's probably not going to be true. So
You know what it was? I think it was Game 7 versus Mick, where Kayoshi, I think, strikes me as a very optimistic player. They're the type of player that's just like, I'm going to put the stuff in my deck that I could conceivably draw, and if it all goes well, this turn will be great. And it worked out for them because that's how they won their deciding game versus Mick, was they took a very early Leprechaun and they happened to line their cards up just right to trigger it, and then everything went lovely from there. And I think we saw that with the one of these earlier games too, right? I think it was the barge game, right, where they were very optimistic in adding payload rather than adding second barge. And this seems in keeping with theme. It's like I got just barely enough draw to maybe make a Soothsayer make sense, rather than adding more draw cards.
yeah, it was just getting to be time where you could see it as being maybe defensible, and so as you're saying with the playstyle, that would make sense for Kayoshi to add it then. But gosh, wouldn't you love it for that to be
Look
a
at
hunting
this! Look
lodge?
at this Soothsayer! You deserve this. Imagine if that were a hunting lodge. This hand is justice.
Yeah, this is. It would be even more justice if the soothsayer saves the turn.
Look how terrible. They tried to cause themselves to dud by buying the Soothsayer, and their opponent said, no, my Soothsayer is even worse. It will draw you out of your dud, by drawing you into a real card like Torture.
Although dudding is still quite likely to happen, right? I don't think you can really play the torturer.
Can you play the Soothsayer?
I mean, you bought it, so it's time to believe in it.
So, if they got an importer coming in, yeah, you just gain a villa and then you're fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Or
importer
you just,
coming in.
or you can gain
Gotcha.
actually, you can gain any action card. Probably you don't gain a villa. You just gain like a torture or a hunting lot or something. You trigger ban of nomads for plus action. Might be even better. Um, but anyways, if there weren't an importer, I think the answer would be like, if I'm playing Soothsayer, it's I'm gaining gold, taking plus action, and then playing the torture. And I'm getting in that Soothsayer play first.
I see. Yeah, I'm not even considering Band of Nomads.
Oh right, the nomads hater. Um, okay, so they chose to go for Villa. This is all right. I mean, the downside, of course, is Villa is a much worse card in your deck. Like Villa is a card you gain because you need Villa at the precise moment that you're gaining, not because you want it to be in your deck. And so they gained a Villa when they could have gained an action and triggered Band of Nomads to save the turn. Um, the argument, as JC Thrust points out, is like you only got the one favor left. Maybe there's some other situation where you really need to trigger that favor, and so you take a Villa now to conserve the favor.
Yeah, I can see that favor being really, really valuable to hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
Piles are becoming pretty low.
Wait, why did that buy a copper, lol? Because of Fountain. We got to get to 10 coppers at some point. If you plan on buying 3 coppers at some point in the game, you can think about each of those coppers as being 5 victory points. And sheepdogs and villas and curses are all low, so I think the copper makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's time. You don't find your plus buys that frequently where you have extra. You need three of them. And this game
Yeah.
is ending pretty eminently.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that copper.
You might end up having to use Abandoned Nomads for a buy to end the game.
Yeah. Yeah, they're sitting on a little bit extra plus buy essentially with these last few favors. Uh we're spinning, are we going for it?
Is this just it?
Yeah, I seem to think it is. At the moment they've got a tie guaranteed. Are they taking the tie? Oh, there we go. That's a win. Oh, the tower points. I'm gonna trust that Holtz counted those up. Um,
Yep, and this is enough to even buy an estate at the end, so this will clearly be enough, although we're seeing more thinking happening here.
I guess. Well, you got to be careful because there's tower weirdness. You know, curses are going to end up being 0 victory points. So if your opponent has more of the curses, they're going to get effectively a buff from that. And then the sheepdogs get a count. This will surely win, but it makes sense to just dot your I's and cross your T's here, I think.
Sure, yeah, if you weren't sure of the counts, I was thinking that the curse split would have been at least tied if Rubesty just buys the last two.
Yeah, now they've got enough to buy 3 coppers even.
But this will win by 24 points instead of, or 26 instead of 1. So that's cool.
I think that was the first win for player 2, was it? I'm gonna go check the results because I have no idea at this point.
I believe that's right. It's Rubesty 3-2 now, right?
Let's see, match Kayoshii Rubesty. Yes, it is 3-2 Rubesty's favor. That was the first win for player 2, and so now match point for Rubesty if they win this one, and they get to go player 1.
Another board where Village is difficult to come by.
Way of
Except
the Ox
that
is a lot of
it's on every
villages.
card.
Yeah, I think there's only 8 stacks of villages in this deck.
As I stand my eyes to
So
the right.
yeah, we do have trashing for once. So while we have another cursor, it won't be as decisive here. Um, Someone's saying oof, and I have not caught up yet. Game
There was
losing
the
draw. Oh god,
diplomat
what
that
happened?
drew 2 experiments dead.
Oh, that's nasty. Uh,
Or 1 dead.
Wait, two diplomats each drew 1 experiment dead. Um, Let me get caught up. So Rubesty opens experiment diplomat, as does Kayoshii. Rubesty hits 2 and buys nothing. That's yeah. Hitting 2 is pretty nasty in this Kino with a bunch of nice looking 3s. Obviously, you're happy to draw an experiment dead if you're going to turn it into a siren. But they needed to find 1 more copper to do it. All right, here's a siren.
So still is the first player to add Siren. Although it draws it in a position where it'll be just play Siren and pass, I would assume. If that's if play it at all.
Five. Skirmisher already. Interesting. Who has the junk dealers? Do they have both junk dealers? Okay, yeah. I was thinking second junk dealer, but they've already got 2. I think the skirmisher makes sense. You probably want a relic at some point, and if you're going to buy a relic, you could add in a skirmisher first, and then it triggers off the relic. Actually, I don't know. I'm second guessing this. Um,
Yeah, to me, Skirmisher seems very peddlery here rather than a useful attack. And if they have Siren down, it's even
yeah,
worse
the
than
skirmisher actually does not
useless.
hurt that much. Yeah, I'm gonna take it back. I don't like skirmisher anymore. If they got a siren in play, it's fine because they discard stuff and they draw back up to 8. If they don't have a siren in play, I mean, you're at least activating the diplomats, which is not huge or anything, but that is something. Um,
Yeah, Market gives you what you want basically, which is just a peddler. But it also has the plus buy, which is actually quite nice to have.
no, Rubesty is much later to junk dealers. Like this is their first junk dealer that they're just now playing for the first time on this turn, whereas Kayoshi's already got 2. They do have the sirens, which are nice. Or actually, they only got the 1 siren. Yeah, I think Kayoshi still looks ahead to me.
Yeah, I would say so. Has a little bit less stuff in the deck, um, in some ways, but is so much cleaner. And I mean, really, the only thing that's a little bit less in the deck is diplomats, really. So
Yeah, like having the earlier siren is nice, but in a Keenan with trashing, losing the curse split is not significant. I'm gonna I'm gonna take the player who's got 2 junk dealers and is playing them earlier.
yeah, certainly.
Just a silver here, I expect. More experiment. Do you need those?
I mean, Rubesty is short on drawing, so
Oh, yeah, maybe I am overestimating the deck.
yeah, it's only played Junk Dealer
You're probably right.
once. Like, let's not forget.
Yeah. I was forgetting. Market time. You want plus buy, and I think market looks better than ranger. I would not mind having a pair of rangers, but I think market seems like the first plus buy card.
Yeah, yeah, I like Market quite a bit more here because you're just strapped for those actions while you're playing Siren and trying to build up your action card base. Yeah, the Skirmisher
'Cause
continuously saving turns for Rubesty.
has either of these players gone far in the tournament before? I think this might be a first for both of them.
I'm not sure.
Rubesty's not a new player, but I feel like they've been on the top of the leaderboard a lot more recently, like in the past year, than they have in the past. Like they were number one for a while, and actually, I think they're the first seed because they were number one at the start of tournament, which is when all the seeding was decided.
Neither of these players
Rubesty
has
have a
ever
good
played
league.
League. I did check that.
I do believe they're probably part of the Japanese league. Japan's got their own league. Some of the Japanese players also play in the general league.
Yeah, I would guess that they play in that, although I don't. I've not looked at the player base for that Japanese league.
Let's see if I can go find it real fast.
Kayoshi really loading up on attacks that don't do much against Siren, but Rubesty's having trouble or going to have trouble playing Sirens consistently, so they'll still do a little bit of damage, I would think. Yeah, it does. And there's still so much junk in Rubesty's deck that there's just really. It would take a misplay where Kayoshi just takes tons of turns off, misbuying things that don't add to the deck, which I do not see happening at all.
All right, so we're going to a game 7, most likely. Although saying that probably jinxes it. Rubesty will now clinch out a win somehow.
It's lazy to just build with buying more markets here, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong. Yeah, just keep clicking market until they resign. Yeah, I wouldn't mind that.
It won the first market. I think probably it's not the most efficient way to scale up. I think I'd want like a pair of Rangers for plus buy, and then probably just play in treasures. But just clicking markets is definitely all right.
Yeah, if you're way ahead, I think just clicking markets is extremely defensible. If it's close, then you really need to think about doing the ranger and treasure and other stuff.
I think I found the Japanese league standings. Oh, this is just one of the divisions. Hmm.
My recording is still hanging in there, which is cool. We'll see if it makes it.
I don't see either of them, and this is season 24, which is like a few seasons back. Maybe they don't play in the Japanese league.
And here Kayoshi has the absolute luxury of thinking about whether to hang on to these coppers or not. Okay, just double there seems fine. Because meanwhile, this is what Rubesty's turns look like. yeah, just adding consistency. I mean, Rubesty is not much of a resigner, I can tell. But well, no, I'm made a fool of immediately. Um,
All right, down to the final game, and Kayoshi gets to be the first player. Uh,
I hope someone has a 5-2.
this.
No, I wanted a 5-2 and Soothsayer open again. That would have been fun.
Oh god, yeah. Um, so we do have trashing here with Rice Broker, but that is not a good card at trashing curses. So Soothsayer might be playable here. There's no village, which makes for an awkward kingdom. Do you try to get together Scrying Pool and Mill, or do you just play with like a pair of wharfs? I think Scrying Pool and Mill probably has to pay off, right?
I would think so. You've got Rice Broker to help out a little bit, and I would
The
think
Rice
you
Broker
can
can
make
thin
it
the
work.
coppers. I'd try to thin the coppers first, and then Mill can discard the estates for money, and I'm not just unhappy about having them in the deck. Um, and then you just play a wharf every turn, and you got 3 buys per turn. I think that's my goal. Something like scrying pools, mills, a pair of wharves.
I think I like that. I think I like it especially because if you have Duchy Duke available for scoring. If you didn't have Duchy Duke, I'd be more inclined to think the Worf direct thing might just outrace that.
Yep. Actually, Bandit would not be such a terrible card here. Like, you don't want to be playing a Soothsayer every turn, for example, to gain golds. That deck's probably fine having a few golds, but you don't need to do it consistently. And you do need to play a terminal action card to get plus buy. Whereas Bandit, you can just like take one turn off of playing Wharf, add a Bandit, play it once, get 2 golds, and get back out of your deck. That seems all right as a quick way to add payload.
Yeah, it's like a pillage that gives you golds instead of spoils and doesn't have an attack.
Yeah, exactly. It hits your potion, could be nasty. So how do they open? Kayoshi opens Silver Mill. Rubesty opens Potion Herbalist. Ooh, that's exciting. I don't hate it. I don't think Herbalist is a long-term goal, but I mean, it can top deck your potions, so you can play that more often. And then it's a cheap action that you can feed to Rice Broker later once you want to pivot to Wharfs. I think the Herbalist actually is kind of neat.
Yeah,
It's not on my radar.
it's kind of neat. Well, we see a Soothsayer by Kayoshi already.
Uh, so Silver Mill, I also think is a totally fine opening. It's good at hitting 5, and as it turns out, Kayoshi hits 5 twice. So that's nice. I Soothsayer's not as terrible here as it was before, but I don't still know.
Yeah, I think it's
I'd
going to
rather Wharf.
be competitive. Like, I think it's going to lead to an interesting
Yeah,
game.
yeah. I think it's. I don't think it's right, but it's a thing that you could do. It's a card that exists in this kingdom.
If you hit 5-5 off the opening shuffle, a lot of things start to look a lot smarter.
All right, so you guys got the goods, I think, on the Japanese link. Let's see what this link goes to. Okay, so I looked at 24 and 25. Um, not seeing them in season 23. Oh, here we go. Definitely at some point, at the very least, Rubesty was playing the Japanese league because they won seasons 10 and 11. And then by seasons 24 and 25, which are the most recent ones, they were no longer playing. But yeah, they also won season 7. So Rubesty has a track record of playing in the league to great success. Um, did Kayoshi play in any of these?
Well, Kayoshi elects to now go potion, uh, which I don't really understand at all.
Um, a delayed potion could be reasonable. You want to go a little bit thin. Scrying Pool's not super good, really.
I just don't. If you're buying the Soothsayer, I would think that that's pretty incompatible with uh, the delayed potion. I mean, it's maybe still Strang Pool's good enough to where like it's still better to buy the delayed potion than to not buy potion at all. Um, but it's surprising to me. I would think you'd really just want to be trying to
Mhm.
race those provinces down. I think the issue with, especially the issue with money here, is it seems like the money here is decent because it's like Soothsayer and Wharf, but it's really not
Mhm.
that good because it takes a while for that to get warmed up. There's not awesome support from the rest of the kingdom for money. There's really like not any. So yeah, I think the deck that has three scrying pulls in it already is looking
The
pretty
one other thing
convincing
that
to
jumps
me.
out to me for the money deck is you probably get more of the aqueduct points. Like Silver Mill even comes with a free aqueduct point on turn two. Um, but like you play the soothsayers early, you're probably earlier to buy provinces, and so you also control when the golds get gained for the most part. So you're going to get a few extra victory points off of that. Um,
The issue is this.
yeah, yeah. The scrying pool deck is working pretty quickly. Uh, it does not have a whole lot of money in it as of yet. I would surely like Mills pretty soon.
Yeah, mills are
It's an
the way
action
to
card,
add.
and it's two. If you're overdrawing your deck, Mill converts all these estates into money really fast.
Yeah, mills the way to clearly the way to add payload. Uh, Initially, at least, might be a point where you do a bandit thing, but yeah,
Prized by the copper trash. Um,
I'm a little bit as well because now you can't buy scrying pool mill.
I think they couldn't have afforded it either way, actually, right? Because they trashed a copper, but they drew a copper, so it's the same total amount. I think it was just kind of an unfortunate draw. They're hoping to find one more copper, and there wasn't an easy way to make it work. Um, I like the mill buy. I think it seems like you need the money.
Yep, seems reasonable. And meanwhile, this money deck is, it's turn 10. You're still not buying province yet. That's not a
I
great spot.
predict second Wharf here, probably. Yeah. Oh, wait, is it a money deck? I'm looking at a potion.
I mean, they did
Forgot about
add the
that.
late potion. I mean, it's a money deck with one
Yeah.
potion and a scrying pool, so it's not
Yeah.
really terribly coherent.
Did not manage to find a wharf, which is what you ideally want. Um, I wonder if you take a free herb, like supposing you hit 4 and 2 buys there, would you take a free herbalist? You're never playing it, I don't think, but it's something you could feed to your rice broker for a bunch of draw if they line up.
You could feed it to your rice broker. Issues probably that you still are really need to be trashing coppers and Kayoshi's spot with those rice brokers. So it's not clear to me.
This is a slightly awkward hand for Rubesty. Obviously, you want to discard both of these mills if you can, but then you're discarding a bunch of junk into the shuffle you're about to trigger. Um, Probably, I think you still got to do it, just because hitting 4 or I guess 6 and 2 buys is important. You got a scrying pool that like at least get you a little bit of the way through this. Maybe I'm underestimating how much junk is down there.
Yeah, not really any junk. So I mean that was a
Yeah, let's see what I find.
fortunate
Okay, yeah,
way
this
to
is good then.
put those cards down there, but
Either 2/3 likely it looked like to find the herbalist. A slight gamble, but I guess if you don't find the herbalist, you just buy one card and it's not the end of the world.
I think if you could find the mill and just leave it on top, and you could that would make sure you'd find the herbalist. So you know, in between 2/3 and
Wait,
100% halfway, I think.
let me go back and look. So if your bottom, if the 3 cards in the discard are in the order of mill, estate, herbalist, then you definitely don't find the herbalist, right? Like that's the disaster case, and that's not super likely, but it's possible.
Well, you could just keep the mill on top, right? Draw the mill,
Oh,
draw.
you're right.
Yeah,
You're right because you draw the mill and the estate, and then the mill. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, it's 100%. Sounds like. Or I guess maybe the worst case scenario then is herbalist estate, because then you find the herbalist, but you don't find enough money to make use of it,
right. Because you might want to discard the herbalist in that spot.
and then take the 50-50 to find the mill. Yeah,
Right.
that's probably right.
But yeah, this is resignable. Like this is. I think we won't see a resign yet, and that's totally reasonable. Um,
Mhm.
but this Rubesty deck is just going to keep building and getting better turn by turn, and it's going to be less true.
Just another scrying pool and mill. Bandit. Okay.
I mean, yeah, Tayoshi's deck can broker actions for a bit and can get some provinces, so I can see how it's not resignable in that sense. Um, but I mean, maybe you're able to get piles low enough to where I guess scrying pool's low, so duchies get low. Maybe duchy duke isn't a thing. Yeah, I mean, there's enough game here where maybe you could see some angles where you get out ahead on points and piles are enough of a problem.
Is it time for the Soothsayer to be? Wait, I'm looking at the curse pile. Have we only played this twice? The Soothsayer that we got on turn 4?
That must be. There's no other reason for the curse to be lowered. And
If I
twice,
didn't know any better, I would think that card wasn't so good.
yeah, and it's probably good. It's only held up as well as it has in this game because it's only been played twice.
Yeah. All right, we'll draw our deck here. Yeah. Okay. So we've forgotten our old ways. We're done with the Soothsayer. Now we got a deck that, I mean, it's drawing itself. So yeah, I think there's still a game here. Um,
Yeah, because
I
the
don't know what
end
to find.
states of these decks are actually pretty similar at this point.
Yeah.
Kayoshi's deck is less consistent and will green more poorly, but not by a necessarily tremendous amount.
They do have 2 Wharves. Um, so they'll probably lose the Scrying Pool split 7-3. But they've got at least some decent duration draw to avoid worst case scenarios. I don't know what to buy here. Pretty sure I want a Scrying Pool. All right, they like Holtz's line of Province Scrying Pool Herbalist. Um, I think that's reasonable. The case for it, I think, is you're building the deck that I think wants to end the game sooner. So go straight for the provinces. Don't build as big. The one thing that I think is going to be a little bit awkward for Rubesty is Scrying Pools will be empty. Mills will be empty, or at least very low, very soon. and then you're gonna want to take duchies and dukes. But you are playing versus a deck that has 3 buys, and so if you lower the duchies too much, they snap up the duchies before you get to the dukes. That's a good point from I don't know. Something that Rubesty, I don't know if they had the opportunity here in practice, but something that you want to think about is discard some scrying pools with mill, then just play a second mill and trigger a shuffle, and you just draw one of the scrying pools, and then you guarantee you top decked another scrying pool for your next turn. And their deck is like super reliable anyway, so it probably won't matter. But like you want to avoid a scenario where you don't find any of your scrying pools, and they could have guaranteed that they would have one on top.
Yeah, had multiple opportunities to, or I think multiple opportunities, but at least one opportunity to give themselves a 50% chance of putting a scrying pool on top.
Presume we're playing the bandit here. If we're not, then why did we get it?
Yeah, it just needs to be played now. I mean, I don't think there's any reason to think maybe you want the
Oh,
last scrying pool.
um, I'm very confused. Okay, okay, no, I'm less confused now. I follow. So they knew they were going to gain 2 golds, which is going to put 2 points in the aqueduct, and so I guess they're considering it's a 4 victory point swing if you buy the mill versus if your opponent buys mill next turn, or province for that matter. And so I guess if you're playing the bandit, you got to buy a victory card the turn you play the bandit, and so you're not buying a scrying pool. And if you're not buying a scrying pool, your opponent's got a potion, and they could buy a scrying pool, and then you're not going to need the potion next turn anyway. As I say that, kayoshii trashes the last potion, which I don't think I like. I don't remember the exact state of their hand. Maybe they needed to trash that for draw. But again, I think for kayoshii, taking that last scrying pool, I think, is a big deal. Not because you need it, although I wouldn't mind having it, but because it empties that pile. And I think Rubesty could end up in a sticky situation with piles. If Mills empty, Scrying Pool's empty, and they try to take duchies, then they lose on a duchy pile out. With Scrying Pool at 1 and neither player with a potion, it is not going to be easy to empty that third pile. I think that makes it easier, a lot easier for Rubesty to win on duchies and dukes if they need to.
Yeah, I mean,
Because it's harder to think
it extends the game by a turn, basically, because you have to. There's no way to gain and play a potion. So,
right, yeah,
and there's not a third pile at all.
yep. Golden Mill, okay. Yeah, I think Kayoshi's deck, it did seem like it needed more payload than it had, I think. 10 is not a big number, not an exciting number. So you want to buy Province there, but if you're just buying Province and Herbalist, like your deck's never getting any bigger in terms of the amount that it does. They also still have all 3 of their estates, which is a bit of a problem. I think as Rubesty, you really want a Wharf now.
Yeah, I can see the argument for the third buy, although you might just say, I'm going to be consistently. Gosh, I mean, yeah, I think the third buy is going to be nice.
I don't think you
Although
want to play the rest of this game with just 2 buys.
it's a little bit awkward to add the Wharf now, I think, as well. It's not.
So you're taking off 1 buy now, and then you're still only going to have 2 buys next turn when you play the Wharf. And you're probably buying a Wharf. You're sacrificing 2 total buys, I suppose. But then you have 3 buys for the rest of the game, which I think is worth it. There's a bunch of duchies and dukes to be had.
So you'll have 3 buys, but you only have 13, with those 3 buys. And so, I mean, Province. Well, you have more than 13, so you have 14. So that's how math works. But you have 14, so like Province plus Duchy, or maybe Duchy plus Duchy plus, there's not even really a 4. So I like the idea of having 3 buys, but I'm not sure the math really works out where you're doing that much with it. And
Well, so if you manage to get 1 more mill, for example, then you'll have 15, which is 3 duchies. You'd also always gain and play one more bandit to add 6 more payload.
Yeah, Wharf Mill looks. Yeah, if you're to your point. Yeah, if you're building, you can just choose to build committedly. You don't have to just do Province Wharf.
Yeah. I mean, like Rubesty, I don't think has a bad chance of winning if they just went for provinces. I think Duchy Duke looks better though because they got the deck that has a lot more longevity to it. Um,
Yeah, I think so.
but like
And especially now that
if
the
they just
potion's
double
gone.
here, like double here, double again, that's still decent. Um, I would buy Wharf Mill, but these players like their provinces. Maybe they'll just do double province. Who knows?
Yeah, we're just leaving those estates in just because they're points. But they, I mean, they're negative coins in a very, very seriously potential way.
That's a good point. The fact that they're keeping their estate, they did keep that one estate inexplicably in the Jack Barge game. Uh, if they're keeping the estates, to me that suggests they might be thinking about double province here. Because if you buy double province here, you're up by 1 point with 4 provinces left. So if you both double, you would win in that scenario, and the estates could matter. I think if you're planning for the longer game of duchies and dukes, you're going to eventually have a bunch of green cards in your deck, and you're going to want these grind pools to not dud. And so I think you would trash the estates if you're going for duchies and dukes. And the fact that they're keeping them, to me, makes me think they're thinking about provinces.
But yeah, two
Oh,
provinces
two
can't
two
be.
provinces cost 60. That's a good point. I, for whatever reason, thought that was 17 in my head. Maybe I thought there were 3 golds. Maybe I just can't add 9 plus 6. Somehow I concluded that was 17 money. Okay, so forget I said anything. I mean, maybe they're planning like gold plus province then. The fact that they're not trashing the estate just makes it look like they want a province. And I have a hard time explaining why they're not just trashing the estates and buying Mill Wharf.
Yeah, Gold Province would be the aggressive line, which probably will still work out, but is very potentially going to mean that you won't double province later on because you might not have your mills able to discard stuff, although generally they will be able to. But it's riskier. It's riskier than just if you think the math's going to work out for just buying Wharf Mill, hitting 15 for the rest of the game, which sounds pretty good to me. Uh, then that's going to be more consistent.
Thinking hard. I guess like this does seem like one of the pivot points of the game is am I going for provinces? Am I going for duchies and dukes? Am I adding a wharf? So I guess it makes sense that this is a difficult decision. I think the answer is wharf into duchies and dukes, but they seem to be contemplating more deeply.
I mean, the fact that the Wharf into Duchies and Dukes thing does take, it's not going to be 3 buys until 2 turns from now, right? I can see that giving you some pause and thinking, is that going to slow me down so much that I just get provinced against and I don't actually have the time to catch up?
Yeah, I mean, like Kayoshi's deck is the weaker of the two, but they're not out of this in part because like those rice brokers, like you could easily cannibalize your deck, trash a scrying pool for 5 draw immediately, and if they just like find a rice broker on top a few times, get a burst of draw, get a wharf in play, they could easily hit double province consistently from here, and maybe then you're a little bit slow. Sure enough, Rubesty, after deep thought, has chosen to go for provinces.
Just for provinces, but takes the mill with it. I think that's a pretty reasonable strategy just to say, I think my deck's a little bit better. I'm going to keep it a little bit better and stay close in points and hope that works out.
We'll see. It seems riskier to me, because the game is now going to be shorter, and your opponent's deck has the less in it and it's less reliable, but it can easily get a bunch of draw for another turn or two off of these rice brokers.
Right. And it's right now the deck is really not much worse than Rubesty's deck in terms of turn by turn output. In fact, it's probably a little bit better.
Let's
So
see,
actually, it
9,
might be kind of a
11,
disastrous
15.
decision for Rubesty to be pursuing provinces.
So I think you do discard here. I think. Actually, I don't know. So it's a tough call because that extra 2 money makes all the difference in the world for hitting double province. But you also just top deck 2 green cards, which is really ugly. But I guess if you can draw 2 action cards at the top, then
Yeah, if you
by
just
all
draw
means
your
go for it.
scrying pool on top, and then those estates are
Yeah.
perfect. That way, your scrying pool cannot hit them. Everything goes perfectly. And I kind of like the aggressive draw play there from Kayoshi. It's both in character and seems like given the game states, I think that's what you want to be doing. And now Rubesty is like, what do you do actually? Because now you only have 2 buys. You it's too late to go Dutchy Duke. You're kind of in trouble.
Yeah. So yeah, I like the provinces more when I thought they could buy 2 provinces. Um, so as Rubesty, it's like you did see your opponent like just barely hit double, and that was off of a rice broker play, and then like 1 rice broker left in their deck. So your opponent like could hit double again, but I think in practice that really relies on them finding the rice broker early in the shuffle, lining it up with an action and trashing it, which is not guaranteed. So you could try to play around your opponent missing double. I don't know if I'd want to play around my opponent missing even single province. That seems like asking too much. But even double seems hard to play around. So even single province. Like if you buy 1 province here, you're at 23. Your opponent buys another province, they're at 29. You have to have them like full dud for like a whole turn to catch up. Um,
So is the soothsayer in the optimal line here? Is that what we're learning?
uh, oh, so they do go for the province. Um,
Well, this could be finds another scrying pool quite critically.
I think they really need to find this out rice broker. Oh, that's a toughie. Do you just keep the gold on top and say? I think you do. So that's just you buy 1 province and you very likely have a rice broker on top. The worst case scenario is you draw the rice broker with the wharf and then you're sad.
But yeah,
But there is a 5-6 chance you've left a rice broker on top of your deck for next turn. Yeah, this
yeah.
is definitely keep it. Um, the thing that you gotta keep in mind is your opponent only has 2 buys, so even with like a phenomenal turn, they're not outscoring you.
And that's it.
Well, so they found the rice broker. They didn't find any actions with it quite yet, but they do have a pin in hand.
So it was certainly not resignable earlier. I don't know if that was because Rubesty sort
Yeah.
of misplayed. It didn't seem like Rubesty. Maybe there could have been some things that could have been done to go a turn faster at a third buy. Certainly, the Dutchy Duke line earlier was a potential option.
Yeah.
Um,
So going back to the earlier point, I think Kayoshi's opening was fine. I think the delayed scrying pool, just mill silver. They also had the good case scenario for that, which is they hit double fives turn 3 and turn 4. Still don't like the soothsayer, but they also killed it at a fairly early juncture. Um, and like the wharf money thing or money-ish thing, I do think looks reasonable. Um, so good early draws, plus some fortunate rice broker hits, plus an opponent who's probably slightly underplaying their deck a little bit, was enough to seal the deal. I do. I like the herbalist open. Like it wasn't on my radar, but I think the herbalist potion thing, like this looks like a fine deck. Obviously, it's been drawing itself for a while now. I think they've had a little bit of trouble uh, scaling up. I think the answer, I would have looked at Dutchy and Duke. Um, like seeing how this played out, I don't know whether I would take Mill Silver or Early Scrying Pool. Um,
if you hit 5-5, I'm taking Mill Silver every time. But
Yeah, 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 exactly.
I think that's pretty
Um,
unlikely. I mean, I think that's like less than 1 in 6.
all right. Yeah, I thought that was Rubesty seemed in the lead there for a while there. Um, but Kayoshi clinches the victory 4-3 in a close match and will advance to the final four and be the first one to do so. So we don't know who they're playing yet. Certainly, I think 100% guaranteed there'll be at least one more player from Japan because there's another Japan versus Japan match. I forget which one it is. Um, and we got Germany on Germany, and then there's NPMT versus somebody. I forget who, but that's the match.
Right? Yeah, certainly well represented Japan again in the quarterfinals, and I mean you'd see lots of good play here on order. Some different decks as well, some non mirrors. So yeah, congrats to Kayoshi, and yeah, see y'all.